Bill Wyman, the steady backbone of the Rolling Stones, sits in quiet reflection, ready to unveil decades of untold truths. For over 30 years, he stood in Mick Jagger's shadow, the world captivated by the frontman's electrifying persona. But today, Wyman pulls back the curtain on a side of Jagger few have seen: a man whose boundless ambition and unyielding ego left behind a legacy of tension and fractured relationships. Jagger's brilliance propelled the Rolling Stones to greatness, but Wyman reveals the cost of that dominance. Under the glittering image lay a leader whose relentless control often overshadowed collaboration and strained friendships. Wyman's revelations paint a portrait not just of a rock icon but of the turmoil behind the myth, a story of brilliance forged in the fires of conflict. The relationship between Wyman and Jagger was never straightforward. While the world saw them as part of one of the greatest bands in history, their dynamic was often fraught with tension. Wyman, the steady and grounded bassist, often clashed with Jagger's larger-than-life personality and insatiable need for control. In the early days of the Rolling Stones, Jagger's ambition propelled the band forward, but as the years went on, that same ambition began to create cracks in their unity. Wyman often felt sidelined by Jagger's dominant nature. Creative decisions were frequently made without consultation, and Jagger's tendency to take credit for the band's success left little room for the contributions of others. For Wyman, the frustration wasn't just about recognition, it was about being part of a team that often felt like a one-man show. Jagger's need to be in the spotlight overshadowed the collaborative spirit that had once defined the Rolling Stones, leaving Wyman feeling more like an employee than a partner. Jagger's conflicts weren't limited to Wyman. His relationship with Keith Richards, the band's co-founder and creative foil, was a constant source of friction. While their partnership produced some of the most iconic songs in rock history, it was also marked by fierce arguments and power struggles. Richards often accused Jagger of prioritizing his solo ambitions over the band's cohesion, a sentiment that led to bitter disputes during the 1980s. The tension reached its peak during the recording of Dirty Work, an album that was as much a product of their creative genius as it was a reflection of their fractured relationship. Jagger's insistence on control clashed with Richards' rebellious spirit, creating an atmosphere of hostility that permeated the entire process. Bandmates and producers alike described the sessions as grueling, with Jagger's perfectionism and Richards' defiance creating a volatile mix that threatened to tear the band apart. But it wasn't just Richards who found Jagger difficult. Charlie Watts, the band's quiet and steadfast drummer, often bore the brunt of Jagger's demands. While Watts rarely voiced his frustrations publicly, those close to the band noted his quiet disapproval of Jagger's controlling tendencies. For Watts, who valued loyalty and respect, Jagger's behavior often crossed the line, creating a strain that was rarely acknowledged but deeply felt. Mick Jagger's turbulent personality was not confined to the boundaries of the Rolling Stones. His relationships with other musicians and industry figures were just as fraught, often marked by competition and simmering tensions. The man who had dominated the stage as a frontman seemed equally determined to dominate every room he entered. A trait that earned him both admiration and alienation. While the public saw playful rivalry splashed across headlines, the reality behind the scenes was often far more contentious. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Jagger's insatiable drive for recognition created friction with some of the most iconic artists of the era. Figures like David Bowie and Rod Stewart, who shared his stratospheric fame, frequently clashed with Jagger's competitive streak. These were not casual disputes, but collisions of colossal egos. Jagger's relentless need to assert his superiority, coupled with his unwillingness to share the spotlight, turned what might have been collaborations into rivalries. One of the most notorious conflicts was with David Bowie. The two were once allies, their shared star power leading to a celebrated collaboration on Dancing in the Street. But beneath the camaraderie was a subtle battle for dominance. Bowie's enigmatic charisma and chameleonic artistry clashed with Jagger's brash, unrelenting energy. Over time, this rivalry deepened, fueled by Jagger's habit of overshadowing his peers and Bowie's resistance to being eclipsed. Their relationship became a tense game of one-upmanship, their mutual respect tinged with resentment. For Jagger, success was not enough; he needed to be seen as the best. This drive often turned even friendly competition into full-blown rivalries. His interactions with Rod Stewart followed a similar pattern. Stewart, whose distinctive voice and flamboyant stage presence rivaled Jagger's own, frequently found himself at odds with the Rolling Stones frontman. What might have been a supportive peer relationship was instead overshadowed by Jagger's sharp critiques and veiled dismissals. Jagger's need to dominate didn't just alienate individuals, it created a broader perception of him as difficult and unapproachable. For many in the industry, working with him was a double-edged sword, an opportunity for greatness tempered by the likelihood of conflict. His intensity, while a cornerstone of his success, often burned bridges, leaving behind a trail of strained alliances and missed opportunities. These conflicts painted a stark contrast to Jagger's public image as a confident, charismatic leader. Behind the scenes, his ambition while driving his meteoric success also revealed an unwilling to share his pedestal, a trait that made him as polarizing as he was powerful. For those who crossed his path, Jagger was not just a rival but a force to be reckoned with, a man whose brilliance was matched only by the intensity of his competitive spirit. Mick Jagger's personal life mirrored the turbulence of his professional one, with his towering ambition casting shadows over his relationships. His romantic entanglements, while captivating headlines and shaping his image as a rock and roll Lothario, often carried an undertone of heartbreak. The women in Jagger's life were drawn to his charisma and undeniable allure, but being with him meant contending with the relentless demands of his fame. His numerous high-profile romances were marked by infidelity and emotional distance, leaving a trail of partners who, for all their efforts, struggled to find a place in his world that wasn't eclipsed by his stardom. For Jagger, relationships were fleeting, often secondary to the allure of his career. The same charm that dazzled on stage often faltered in private, where emotional intimacy gave way to detachment. Those closest to him faced the challenge of competing not just with his career, but with the public's adoration, a dynamic that bred frustration and, at times, despair. For many, the cost of loving Jagger was a loss of self, their needs swallowed up in the vast persona of a man who seemed untouchable. His family life, too, bore the weight of his ambition. As a father, Jagger's financial generosity stood in stark contrast to his emotional absence. His career, with its endless tours, recording sessions, and public appearances, left little room for genuine connection with his children. While he provided materially, the bonds that required time and presence often went untended, creating emotional voids that lingered long after the spotlight dimmed. Jagger's pursuit of greatness, while aspiring to the outside world, came at a profound personal cost. The very drive that propelled him to legendary status also erected barriers between him and those who sought to know the man behind the icon. For his family and partners, the experience was bittersweet, a blend of pride in his achievements and the pain of feeling perpetually out of reach. The duality of Jagger's life is stark, a man who could command the adoration of millions, but often struggled to cultivate the deeper, quieter connections that define a fulfilling personal life. His legacy, while undeniably one of triumph, it carries an undertone of loss, a reminder that the pursuit of fame, no matter how dazzling, often demands sacrifices too great to ignore. Mick Jagger's contributions to music are nothing short of transformative. His electrifying stage presence, boundless energy, and unparalleled charisma redefined what it meant to be a frontman. Jagger didn't just perform, he commanded, leaving audiences breathless and cementing his position as one of the greatest rock icons in history. Yet, as Bill Wyman reveals, this brilliance came with a cost. Behind the swagger and the spotlight was a man of stark contrasts, a visionary driven by relentless ambition, but often blinded to the impact of his actions on those around him. Jagger's drive to dominate was the fuel for his genius, but also the source of much of his controversy. His insistence on control often eclipsed collaboration, turning what could have been moments of unity into battlegrounds of ego. For his bandmates, working with him meant navigating a force of nature, a leader whose vision left little room for dissent or compromise. Wyman's revelations exposed the tension between Jagger's brilliance and his humanity, painting a picture of a man who could inspire awe but also create distance. The Rolling Stones' story is as much about their music as it is about the friction that fueled their success. While their songs continue to inspire generations, the story behind the band is one of endurance through tension, rivalry, and personal sacrifice. Jagger's relentless pursuit of excellence propelled the band to Gria. But it also created cracks that were difficult to ignore. His charisma was magnetic, but it often masked a cold pragmatism that left relationships strained and unresolved. Through Wyman's eyes, Jagger's legacy becomes more than just the myth of a rock god. It is the story of a man who achieved the extraordinary but left a trail of shadows behind him. For every triumph on stage, there was a moment of conflict backstage. For every groundbreaking song, a price was paid in personal relationships. Jagger's light burned brightly, but it often seared those who stood too close. In the end, Mick Jagger's legacy is as complex as the man himself. His genius is undeniable, his contributions timeless, but his journey serves as a cautionary tale about the cost of ambition. The Rolling Stones may have conquered the world, but their story is also a testament to the human price of greatness, a reminder that even the brightest stars carry shadows long after the spotlight fades.